The forensic team leaves after 2 hours. They photograph everything, tag everything, and take the body away. What they don't take is what's left behind. The blood soaked into the carpet fibers, the tissue in places you wouldn't think to look, the smell that starts to set into the walls within 24 hours. That's when the phone rings, not for a detective, not for a coroner. For a stranger in a hazmat suit who charges more per hour than most surgeons. You think this is a niche, gross little job for people with strong stomachs and no other options. A punchline, a curiosity. Something you'd watch a 2-minute video about and forget by lunch. It's not that. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry with almost no competition, built entirely on the worst moments of other people's lives. And it runs on rules most people never find out about until the day they desperately need one of these companies themselves. A single room can cost up to $10,000 to clean, not renovate, not rebuild, clean. And by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why that number exists, and what it actually costs the people who charge it, because the real price of this job was never on the invoice. Let's start with the fantasy, because there is one, and it's stranger than you'd expect. Crime scene cleaning has developed its own strange mythology online. True crime forums treat it like an insider trade, a secret society of people who've seen things the rest of us never will. There are subreddits with tens of thousands of members dissecting the job like it's an elite unit. YouTube thumbnails promise the most disturbing job in America, usually with a blurred-out photo and a narrator doing their best horror documentary voice. Part of the appeal is morbid curiosity. Plain and simple, human beings are wired to lean toward danger from a safe distance. We slow down for car accidents. We binge documentaries about serial killers. A job that puts someone inside an actual murder scene, legally, for money, that scratches an itch true crime media has spent 2 decades sharpening. But there's a second layer to the fantasy, and it's more interesting than the gore. It's the idea of a secret expert, someone with a skill so specific, so unpleasant, that they've cornered a market nobody else wants to touch. No corporate ladder, no cubicle, just you, a truck full of equipment, and a service so necessary that families will pay almost anything to have it handled by someone else. That part isn't wrong, actually. It is a real market gap. Most cleaning companies won't touch a homicide scene. Most families are in no state, physically or emotionally, to do it themselves. Landlords need it done fast, so a unit doesn't sit empty. Insurance adjusters need a name they can put on a claim form. Something has to fill that gap. The industry itself started forming shape in the 1990s, largely because of a very specific problem. Nobody else was licensed, trained, or willing to deal with bloodborne pathogens in a private residence. Regular cleaning crews aren't equipped for OSHA bloodborne pathogen standards. Regular disposal companies can't legally handle biohazard waste. A gap opened up between the police tape coming down and a family being able to walk back into their own home. And an industry grew directly inside that gap. That's the appeal: rare skill, high stakes, a service people are quietly desperate for, and willing to pay almost any price to get. What the mythology leaves out is what it actually takes to stand inside that gap for a living, and what it costs to stay standing there. So, let's talk about the $10,000 room, because that number is where the illusion starts to crack. That figure isn't marketing. It's closer to a floor than a ceiling. Depending on the severity of the scene, the size of the space, and how long a body went undiscovered, cleanup costs can range anywhere from a few $100s for a small, contained incident, up to $25,000 or more for a scene involving advanced decomposition across multiple rooms. Decomposition is the #1 cost driver, and it's not close. A body discovered within hours is a very different job than a body discovered after 2 or 3 weeks. Human decomposition releases fluids that seep into subflooring, insulation, drywall, and framing. In advanced cases, technicians aren't just cleaning surfaces. They're tearing out carpet, padding, and sometimes entire sections of floor and wall down to the studs. What started as a cleaning job quietly becomes a partial demolition project, billed at biohazard remediation rates. Then there's the equipment, and this is where people's assumptions really fall apart. This isn't a mop, a bucket, and some bleach. Technicians work in full coverage Tyvek suits, respirators rated for airborne pathogens, multiple layers of gloves and boot covers, because a single tear or exposure point isn't a minor mistake. It's a potential blood-borne pathogen exposure that can end a career or a life. The chemicals aren't retail grade either. Companies use hospital-level, EPA-registered disinfectants designed to neutralize pathogens like hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and HIV on contact, because that's the legal standard they're held to. Enzymatic cleaners break down organic material at a molecular level. Industrial ozone machines run for days afterward just to pull the odor of decomposition out of drywall and subflooring, because that smell doesn't leave with a wipe down. It leaves with time, machinery, and money. And then there's disposal, which is its own separate cost most people never think about. You cannot put biohazard waste in a regular dumpster. It's classified, tracked, and transported by licensed medical waste handlers, the same category of company that removes hazardous material from hospitals. Every bag has a chain of custody. Every job generates paperwork that has to survive a regulatory audit if anyone ever asks. Now add licensing. In most states, this work requires OSHA blood-borne pathogen certification, hazardous waste transportation compliance, and in many cases, a specific biohazard remediation license that has to be renewed, insured, and bonded every single year. Insurance alone can be a 5-figure annual cost for a small company because the liability exposure is enormous. If a technician makes a documentation error and a pathogen is later linked to a family member, that company can be looking at a lawsuit that ends the business entirely. So when you see $10,000 on an invoice, you're not looking at profit. You're looking at hazmat suits that get thrown away after a single use. You're looking at enzymatic solutions priced by the gallon. You're looking at license disposal fees, insurance premiums, certification renewals, and specialized equipment that most people will never see in their lives. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. Profit margins in this industry are estimated to run somewhere between 10 and 20% for most small operators, once every cost is accounted for. That's a reasonable estimate based on standard industry overhead patterns. Not a confirmed universal figure, but it lines up with what several operators have described publicly. That's not a monopoly print money number. That's closer to what a mid-size construction contractor makes. Except this contractor is standing in a bedroom that still smells like the worst day of someone else's life. And that $10,000 bill doesn't always land where you'd expect it to, either. Here's something almost nobody knows going into this. Homeowners insurance frequently covers crime scene cleanup, but not always, and not automatically. Coverage depends on the specific policy, the state, and whether the death is classified as a covered event. Some policies explicitly exclude suicide. Some cap biohazard cleanup at a few $1,000s, leaving the family to cover the rest out of pocket. In the same week, they're planning a funeral. For landlords, there's no ambiguity at all. It's simply the cost of doing business, and it's treated as urgent, because every day a unit sits uncleaned is a day of lost rent. This is actually where a significant share of the industry's steady income comes from. Not grieving families, but property managers who need turnaround measured in days, not weeks. That funnels the entire model into a strange, quiet reality. This isn't a business that grows by advertising to the public. Nobody searches best crime scene cleaner near me for fun. It grows through relationships, with police departments who hand out a card after they take the tape down, with funeral homes, with property management companies, with landlords who've been burned once and now keep a number saved in their phone, which means the entire financial engine of this industry runs on being the only name mentioned at the worst possible moment in someone else's life. That's the math. Now, here's what the math doesn't show you, because underneath the invoice, underneath the $10,000, the licensing, the insurance premiums, there's a cost this industry doesn't put on paper. And it's the one most technicians will tell you actually breaks people. It starts small. A tightness in the chest before certain calls. A flinch at a smell that reminds you of a scene from 8 months ago. Technicians in this field are regularly exposed to what mental health researchers now call vicarious trauma. Psychological injury that comes not from something happening to you directly, but from repeated close-range exposure to the aftermath of someone else's suffering. It's a concept originally studied in therapists and first responders, and crime scene cleaners sit in an unusual overlap of both worlds. Present at the scene, alone, without the built-in debrief structures, police and paramedics are at least nominally given. Because here's the detail that gets left out of every thumbnail. Police leave. Paramedics leave. The family leaves, often within the hour, unable to stay in the space a moment longer. The cleaner is the one who stays. Alone, usually in a room that just held the worst thing that has ever happened to another human being for hours at a time, working in near silence except for the hum of an air scrubber. There's no partner debriefing you afterward, no department-mandated counseling session, no ritual to mark that something heavy just happened. You finish the job, you peel off the suit, you drive to the next one. Multiple technicians who've spoken publicly about the work describe the same pattern. It's not the blood that stays with you, it's the details. A child's shoes by the door, a half-finished cup of coffee, a birthday card still sitting on the counter, dated for a party that never happened. The scene tells you a story, whether you want it to or not, and you're the only one in the room to hear it. And then there's the smell, which deserves its own moment, because people genuinely underestimate this. Decomposition odor is not like anything else. It's caused by specific volatile organic compounds released as tissue breaks down, and the human brain processes it as an instinctive, primal danger signal. It's not something you get used to. Technicians describe it clinging to sinus memory for years, triggered without warning by something as ordinary as spoiled meat in a grocery store or a neighbor's overflowing trash can. A flashback with no visual attached, just smell and dread. Sleep disruption is one of the most commonly reported symptoms in this line of work. Intrusive imagery, hypervigilance in ordinary spaces, a heightened, uneasy awareness in supermarkets, in hospitals, in any room that smells slightly wrong. Some describe a growing inability to be around blood in any context, even a minor kitchen cut, because the brain has rewired the association entirely. Social isolation follows close behind. And this is one of the cruelest parts of the job, because it's self-inflicted out of love. Most technicians say they don't talk about their day. Not with partners, not with friends, not at dinner. What are you supposed to say? That today's job involved a body that had been there for 3 weeks in July? You learn to compartmentalize so completely that entire parts of your life become unspeakable, even to the people closest to you. And silence, held long enough, becomes its own kind of distance. There isn't reliable, large-scale data specifically isolating suicide rates among crime scene cleaners as a standalone profession. The field is simply too small and under-tracked for that kind of study to exist. But the risk factors are well documented and impossible to ignore. Chronic, unprocessed exposure to death, minimal institutional mental health support, high rates of secondary traumatic stress, and social isolation. The exact combination researchers flag as a red zone in occupational psychology. Several mental health professionals who specialize in trauma-exposed occupations have specifically named crime scene cleaning as a high-risk, under-supported field, precisely because it combines first responder-level exposure with civilian-level support. There's no department psychologist, no peer support group built into the job, no pension fund cushioning the long-term cost of what the mind absorbs. One scene at a time, for years. Turnover in this industry is high, and it's rarely about the money. People who leave this field almost never say the pay was bad. They say they couldn't carry it anymore. And that's the part the $10,000 invoice was never built to cover. So, who actually stays in this job long term? It's rarely the person chasing a morbid thrill. Those people leave within months, once the reality replaces the fantasy. The technicians who last years tend to describe something closer to a mission, a genuine desire to give a grieving family one thing they don't have to face themselves. There's a strange, quiet dignity in that. Handing someone back their home, so their last memory of that room isn't the worst day of their life. But even mission doesn't cancel out biology. Even purpose has a cost, paid in small installments, one scene at a time, whether you notice it accumulating or not. So, here's the question this industry rarely gets asked, because it's easier to talk about the money. If a service is this necessary, this unavoidable, Why is the psychological cost of providing it still treated as the technician's private problem to solve alone? The room gets cleaned, the invoice gets paid, the family gets their home back, but nobody sends a bill for what the person standing in that room had to carry out with them. So, the next time you see $10,000 on a cleanup invoice, ask yourself what that number was actually never designed to cover.